Good evening, folks. This is Diamond from the Oppenheimer Ranch Project on Thursday, November 2nd at 8:57 p.m. Mountain Time, 2017. You're looking at the current GOES Electron Flux 5-minute data live, and it shows us dropping down into Electron Bombardment, which is a radiation storm at level 2. If you come over to spaceweathernews.com, Ben Davidson Suspicious Observer site, you can get this data. I'll leave you links to all of these, but let's talk about what high energy electron bombardment means. Now, the radiation storm level occurs when the red-blue curves cross the dotted hash at 10 to the third. And each line below it is a factor of 10 higher in radiation storm. So this would be S1, S2, S3. And over here, it's opposite for protons, S1, S2, S3. Here we have a graphic showing you that on the proton flux. So when we have a large CME, we typically get a proton flux with this radiation storm. But we haven't had any CMEs, right? The sun is in solar minimum, and it's dead. It's flat. There are no coronal mass ejections, so why are we in radiation storm? Well, we're in radiation storm because the weakened magnetosphere of the Earth allows cosmic effects to affect Earth in a greater sense. So we have this southern coronal hole affecting us now. It's not affecting us in a great way. The coronal hole speed's only up to 420. If the coronal hole speed jumped several hundred kilometers per second, up to 600 or 700, the KP would go up into above 4 and into a geomagnetic storm. But because it didn't go up that much, we haven't really coupled with it that much. The effects are minor. So there's a perturbation here in the magnetogram. The KP comes up a little, but not into geomagnetic storm. But in this case, the electron flux is going into high energy bombardment radiation storm levels. It went in it yesterday too for about 12 hours. So let's quick go over what this means. I'll leave you links to all this. This is a paper called Solar Electron Flux, Dark Electrons Found by NASA. And it gives you the history starting in the 70s with Ralph Jurgens. And it shows you that NASA is well aware of the electric universe and the electric potential in the universe. And it gives you a little insight into that high energy bombardment. You can see we're still dropping, and we're going to keep an eye on this. But because the solar wind isn't that high, I don't expect us to go much past this S2 level. S2, moderate space storm. So over here at NOAA, they have the Space Weather Alert and Warning Timeline. It's live, and you can always come here and check. I'll leave you a link to this. You can see what kind of alert or warning has been issued, and you can see that we have been in electron flux warning for days. The same thing we're seeing right now on the 3-day chart. Okay? I'll leave you links to this article here. Specifications of less than 2 millivolt electron flux as a function of local time and geomagnetic activity at geosynchronous orbit. Guys, when these things are perturbed, the protons or the electrons, the biggest effect is in space. So astronauts are first, and then it comes down into airlines and pilots. So those are the first considerations and why they have this set up. I'll leave you links to this amazing paper here, Spacecraft Charging Anomaly and Failure Mechanisms. If you're wondering over at spaceweathernews.com what these green graphs are, what these things are, this has to do with these two charts right above it. The proton flux and electron flux, positive and negative fluxes, affect the charging of our atmosphere. So you can see now here we're in electron flux, high energy bombardment, radiation storm right now. So we should expect some charging in the atmosphere, and we see it right here in this zone. You can see there's surface charging. Now you can read all about it in this paper here. I'm going to supply you the link to spacecraft charging, anomaly and failure mechanisms. And it talks about just what we're talking about right now. So if you want more information on that, you feel free to peruse that. I'll leave you this other paper here, spacecraft charging and hazards to electronics in space. And also NOAA has this solar radiation storm graphic that you can read and actually find out what's going on in the layman's terms. Now the Watchers, about 5 years ago, published this great article when there was a huge solar flare event in January of 2017, or 2012, I'm sorry. And it has a great description of radiation storms and solar radiation storms. So if we want to know what is going on here, an S3 solar radiation storm, let's come down here. It's classified as a strong radiation storm. We're currently in S2. If this falls down here below this line, the blue, will be in S3. But you see that it's only gone this far in the last 2 days. So we'll keep an eye on this. If it falls below this line, this is S3 zone. Let's talk about S3, if it does fall there. It's classified as strong radiation storm that can cause isolated reboots of computers, onboard Earth-orbiting satellites, and made noise in imaging systems. So you get strange, anomalous background images in imaging systems, and you can have problems with your social media and your cloud and anything to do with satellite. It can reduce the efficiency of solar panels. It can degrade HF radio propagation through the polar regions. So the polar regions are most affected, like I've told you before in other videos, and it travels less effect as you travel towards the equator. Causes errors at navigation positions. S3 solar radiation storms can also influence passengers and crew in high-flying aircraft at high latitudes due to radiation exposure. At this level of solar radiation, astronauts on EVA are recommended to take radiation hazard avoidance. High-energy particle measurements are a better indicator of radiation risk to passengers and crews. Pregnant women are particularly susceptible. NASA routinely monitors space weather conditions to determine any potential hazards to the astronauts aboard the ISS. Based on the agency's assessment, the 6 space flyers currently living and working on the orbiting outpost are not in any danger. Lol. So a solar proton event is the inverse of an electron event. And what you're looking at here is the 2012 event in where the proton flux went to S3 as well as the electron flux. Now you'll read over here in the information from NOAA that solar radiation storm caused several impacts near Earth. When energetic protons collide with satellites or humans in space, they can penetrate deep into the object that they collide with and cause damage to electronic circuits or biological DNA. So when these storms are happening, people that live near the poles are actually getting mutated. And even us near the equator, I'm at 40 north latitude. If I go outside, even if I stay inside, I could be currently being mutated. During solar radiation storms at the S2, that's where we currently are, or higher level, passengers and crew in high-flying aircraft at high latitudes may be exposed to radiation risk. When the energetic protons collide with the atmosphere, they ionize the atoms and molecules, thus creating free electrons. These electrons create a layer near the bottom of the ionosphere that can absorb HF radio waves, making radio communications difficult. This has something to do with why we're having this, the DoD is doing this test this weekend. Because these events are going to continue to increase. Guys, the sun has done nothing except gone into solar minimum. What that means is coronal holes become more prevalent. They can last for months. And these holes continuously turn and recouple with Earth. And the bigger they get and the longer they last, the bigger and the longer these solar radiation storms are going to become. And they're going to shut down satellites on a regular basis. They're going to make long distance communication difficult on a regular basis. There's going to be surface charging in satellites on a regular basis. We may even have satellites re-entering the atmosphere on a regular basis moving forward. So it's important for us to keep an eye on this to see how often we keep going into these radiation storms. Now, the last southern coronal hole that passed us did the same thing as this one. It didn't have a geomagnetic storm effect. The northern coronal holes have a larger geomagnetic storm effect on the KP that I'm noticing. These southern holes are more minor. However, the southern holes are resulting in radiation storms and surface charging in the southern hemisphere. That's a heads up. Guys, I hope you got something out of the video. Moving forward, these radiation storms are only going to continue because coronal holes are going to last longer and grow larger. It's the definition of solar minimum. There are human health effects. Here's NOAA Space Weather Scale. We are currently in S2. You can read the biological, satellite, and other systems effects, but get familiar with the stronger effects. There are biological, satellite, and other systems. Unless we have a CME, we don't expect to see a proton flux go up. But when we have these coronal holes passing and coupling with us and the solar wind increases, we are seeing these electron fluxes turn into radiation storms. This is the current chart. All you have to do is Google GOES electron flux if you want to find this chart anytime. And we are in S2 geomagnetic storm. Solar radiation storm. I am sorry. S2 solar radiation storm. Otherwise it would be in G. So, and we may be going to S3. And it's a heads up. You have any questions? Leave it in the comments. I'll be posting the GSM update in about 2 hours. Be safe, everyone.